10 to 15. And then after that, maybe questions, nudge us if we're going too fast. I can certainly slow down my rate. Unfortunately, the accent is here to stay with me for a very long time. So I will do my best to enunciate and be understood. So just a couple of things we're going to cover, sort of brief overview on our agenda, but really we want to let you guys know sort of what led our team to explore this parent intervention, parent training. I think we're still trying to figure it out. But again, it is a pilot study that we did. And so always, puppies make the world a better place, in my opinion. So, you know, I really like that quote. It's not the strongest or the most intelligent who will survive, but those who can best manage change. And I really do think that all of us are just so quick to adapt. I will tell you, I am not a FaceTime person. FaceTime, I'm not a webinar person, but here I am and I'm passionate about this. So on the left, you're gonna see Smooch. That's my Chiweenie and Bodhi. And that was in February of 2020. The world was a different place and just 3 months ago. And then on the right, that was May, and they were already practicing social distance 6 feet away. So I just wanted to share that with you. Just a little bit of on autism. Again, we don't have time to dive into like screening, detection, all that as far as like the measures, but I do want to just put up the definition of ASD from the CDC. And so we're looking at a neurodevelopmental disorder defined by impairments in social communication and social interaction and the presence of restricted and repetitive behaviors. So I'm gonna move this little guy over here. All right, and so again, just some key things to take home is that ASD is a heterogeneous group of disorders, right? And so it impacts each individual differently, and it changes throughout their lifetime. So some children are gonna need a lot of support early on, and then later on they might need less support, okay? And in fact, they might even, I don't like to use the word outgrow the diagnoses, but they may not meet criteria because they have gotten so much intervention and they're just really doing well on their own. So again, just keep in mind, there's a lot of variability with ASD. And so, oopsies, toolbars. Okay. And so, again, you know, ASD is found in all cultures of the world. It does not discriminate based on race, socioeconomic status, education of parents, or other demographic variables. Oopsies, sorry. And again, an experienced professional can diagnose ASD reliably. Now anywhere between 18 and 24 months, but of course, there's several studies that document as early as 15 months, parents are seeing signs, and even as early as 12 months. And so if you guys also want more information about sort of that infant period, again, I'll share with you our website, and you could learn about specific studies that we're doing, not that I'm involved with, but others that are real interesting with young children and the babies. Speaking of babies, there's my niece, Eva Daniela, and you know, I was thankful to use these pictures because I was running out. But so again, I already mentioned that autism. Look at those cheeks, right? They run in the family. So again, although autism can be diagnosed at any age, it is said to be a developmental disorder. Symptoms generally happen or appear the first 2 years of life. And so again, we are seeing those sort of social vulnerabilities early in children, and capturing those are really, they're going to be the key to how we provide the support and intervention. And so a lot of you are probably aware that there's some new estimates that came out of the CDC, and this is now, we're 1 in 54. So the data from before was showing that 1 in 59 children, so it's been about a 10% increase. And this is a network that from the CDC, so a group of folks in 11 states look at the data of children who are 8 years of age and who has autism. And so this is what we have that's the most recent. And so another interesting finding is that the CDC found no difference for the first time in prevalence rates between Black and white children. Okay, so before they were seeing differences, I believe it was 1.4 times more likely that white children were being diagnosed versus Black or Hispanic. Now you have no difference in white or African American or Black, rather, but the gap still remains in prevalence among Hispanic children. And so again, this is just data showing that, you know, this map highlights, so it's not showing who has the most Latinos in the country, but it's showing the population growth since 2008. And so you look at 2008 to 2018 in the South, and we've seen a 33% increase in Latino population. And one more thing I forgot to say, so I do use the term Latinx, but I also use the term Latino. I'm happy to have those kind of discussions afterwards. Sometimes I'll use the term Hispanic if that's how the research is citing the information. And so since we know it's been since we've seen this fast growth in population, what's interesting is that in Georgia, rather, the Hispanic population grew 118%, right? And so another important point that I added, and Dr. Staplewax has talked to me about this as well in terms of maternal age, and she can elaborate more on that, is that they found too that the Latino population is significantly younger than other races, okay? So the median age of Latinos in Georgia is 26 compared to 36 overall and 41 for non-Hispanic whites. And so what that's telling us is, in terms of that's given us an idea of also how much education, how much information we need to engage in with our families and caregivers, as far as like what is detection, early detection of ASD, and how we can help support them. So this was I'll just, some of these I don't have to read, you guys can see, and for the sake of time, let's see. Okay, and so again, you know, we're surrounded, I think a few of you on this call are some of my dear friends in early intervention. You guys are the experts. And so you know that intervention before 3, right, has really positive and long-term effects. And so this is just one of many studies that have been done highlighting that. And yet, I don't know if any of you got to listen to Dr. Sandy Magana. She was amazing. I was totally just enjoying her talk, and I really have read a lot of her work, her and her team's work. And so in one of her studies, she found that Latino families of children with ASD really lack the information in the community, and so that was an important factor in a barrier as well. And so just wanted to add that not only was there a lack of information in the community, but also lack of information in their language, right? And also lack of information from the practitioners and the providers who perhaps were bilingual or bicultural to share that information. And so David Mandel, and he's done also a lot of work on ethnic and racial disparities in terms of ASD access and barriers to services. And so the meaning that parents attribute to their children's symptoms or prognosis may influence the types of interventions they use, right? And so, or whether they even choose intervention at all. So, and then again, regarding parent interventions designed to impact parent behavior may not be effective with Latino families because they have been implemented with non-Latino white families. As such, they may not always have the same outcomes for Latino children with ASD. And so some of these citations are in 2006 and some are in 2015. I have seen over the last 5 years, a lot of different researchers taking a closer look at Latino families and children with ASD and or children with developmental disabilities. So just I wanted to touch base on like the idea. Okay, so I have like 11 minutes. I'm gonna run through these, and what I wanna share about these sort of important cultural values. I don't want to overgeneralize and say that every Latino or every person who's Spanish speaking has to have all these or views these, but I can share my own anecdotal experience that these are important aspects of culture that I take into account for my own self. And then I also have learned from years of working with Latino families that they really value these things in terms of personalismo, so the importance that Latinx people give to kindness and getting along with others. So that's really key. So it's a cultural expectation that involves respectful listening and caring interactions between the service provider and the family as a foundation for building trust and rapport. Simpatía, and again, a lot of these cultural constructs or values, Dr. Magaña and her team and others have looked at closer and also highlighted in their work. But simpatía is an emphasis on courtesy and compassion, even in the face of stress. And so, you know, sometimes when I speak to my families and they have an English-speaking provider and I ask them how their appointment went, they'll share with me and say, you know, súper bien, me cayeron bien, son muy simpáticos o simpática, okay? And again, they're just stressing the idea that that person, the interaction with that individual was respectful and kind and compassionate. And so we Latino cultures, we tend to place a lot of value on that idea of interpersonal harmony, right? And so that's the same way when looking for healthcare support, as well as information on ASD and how to navigate the world for their children. And lastly, and there's several, but I'm just focusing on these three right now, familismo, the strong feeling of loyalty and solidarity among family members. And so the importance of family in contributing to the well-being of their child is huge. And so, and incorporating that extended family. So I spent many years working at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta as an outpatient speech therapist. And most of my appointments would bring folks from their extended family, and they would involve them in describing, giving me case history information, just sharing behaviors they were noticing and that sort of thing. And they also really wanted to be part of the treatment plan, since oftentimes las abuelas, abuelitos, grandmas, grandpas are the ones who are taking care of them, of the children while their parents work. Okay. Who needs a water break? I feel like that commercial with a car salesman. All right. But just real quick, one other thing I didn't focus on, but I'm very interested is in looking at things like fatalismo and spirituality. I think that plays a big role in our culture and how we just approach life in terms of anything from receiving a new diagnosis. Okay, CITAS. So CITAS was about 8 to 10 sessions and it was sort of this idea of doing parent training, sharing information. Some of the information was tips and strategies that I learned through my practicum years, and some of it was just evidence-based information from sources that I'm going to share with you that also had fabulous resources in Spanish. And so just think of the idea of a parent support group, for lack of a better term, but that idea, so kind of learning and sharing and workshop style, also acknowledging their culture, the values, while they're learning about autism, but at the same time while they're trying to build trust and relationships with other parents. So these are just some things that I got a chance to lead this, and so these were things after we were done that I really noticed made our sessions really valuable and help us build that relationship with the parents. And so again, I've already mentioned those, so we'll skip that. I was trying to go the recipe route, but I don't know, here it is. I found that picture, for those of you who like cooking, I love to cook, I love to eat, and so do a lot of Latinos I know. So, you know, you can't make a good meal without putting your heart, right? We put your heart and soul in the food. And then you also put the good spices that we like. So this really was what we found in the group, you know, a space. Sometimes we cried, we laughed together. A lot of folks are still dealing with diagnoses. A lot of parents were dealing with not even knowing the area. Maybe they had just moved there. So these are some things we looked at. One of the things that I really found important in this sort of approach is that CITAS is each session, we should always have the first 10 minutes for a little cafecito, coffee time, because in our culture, we really value that idea again of warming up, okay? Maybe they don't know you or they don't know me. And so getting right down to business was sometimes just a little too much. So I would just spend time chatting with them and hearing about their day, or I would check in on them. And as the weeks went on, I would remember information then shared. And then I would ask them, you know, oh, how's your mom doing? Is her knee feeling better? I know she was at the doctor. And they really, parents really valued that idea that they were with someone that cared about them and listened to them. So on this slide again, for I try to be on time, but yeah, Latinos, we view time very flexible, okay? So I know we're not the only culture that views it like that, but I can tell you our culture does. And another reason I decided to do cafecito is to give parents a chance to get there, because no one wants to hear that you're late all the time and you don't want to miss the information, right? So that's just kind of like a snapshot of what each session would entail. All right, so I'm gonna put it up there for you guys. Happy to share the slides when we're done as well. A big question was what language. Some folks were bilingually exposed and they were trying to speak English because they felt they should. But here's just some information that I would share with them in terms of what's out there and what we know about bilingualism and specific language impairment. And so, and there's more, I can give you guys more on that. And so what were the activities that we would do, right? And so there were times when we spent watching video clips of young children exhibiting ASD red flags and those without. And so the videos were mute. Some were from the Navigator, some were on YouTube. Shout out to Natalie, Brain, and Maura Pelleggi for also helping out with this. Of course, we had permission and signed consent. And then some other things we did, we worked on how we can modify their activities. But we also worked on the idea that it's okay to just play. I know culturally sometimes it's hard. We have to be productive all the time as parents, but there was also this idea that you're helping your child by just playing, and you might have fun too. So let's see what activities we can do. Here are some resources that I shared with them. And so again, we have some amazing resources that a lot of you might already be familiar with. This was a very helpful sheet in terms of going over the red flags of ASD. And so we did lessons on this. And then I also reviewed developmental milestones. Okay, I have no shame because I'm sharing this and I'm not the best artist, but this is, I managed to take a picture of this. We were in the corner conference room at the Marcus Autism Center, and folks had questions about what is joint attention. And all I want to say about joint attention is that even when I would complete speech and language evaluations, we didn't have a whole lot of time to get into that aspect of the how of language, right? That idea of pragmatic language. So I would let families know your child's not talking, he has an expressive language delay, he has a receptive language delay, and not a whole lot of time. And then I would kind of wonder how I can explain autism and that sort of thing. And so I realized I was missing the boat with these guys because I really wasn't sharing what social communication was and what were some deficits that we really needed to focus on. And so there is my, and then lastly with this slide, below it's, ¿qué significa? What does it mean? And so in our culture, again, with other cultures and languages, we have a lot of dialectical variation or differences. And so sometimes it's said atención conjunta, and in other families, they understand it as atención compartida. So that shared attention translates also like joint attention. Okay, Jennifer, I did it.
That was amazing.
All right. Okay, so now you're gonna hear Dr. Staplewax share information about the research, but also again, feel free to ask her any questions. She has a wealth of knowledge in early intervention. She's a psychologist for those of you who got to tune in a little bit late. And so without further ado.
Okay,
take it
a
away.
little bit about this study. So just first off, my hat goes off every time I think about CITAS to Karen. What she's just far too humble to tell you is that this is in many ways her brainchild. She has been creating the manual. She has been working diligently on running these groups, but also taking all that information back to inform the process of how this pilot study unfolded, but then also how we can use this information to build us toward, we hope, a successful submission in the next few months to the NIH to take a look at this. And, you know, we build small studies and then bigger studies, so we have great hopes for this. The whole idea behind the CITAS study that was funded, I believe, by an Emory pilot grant, right? Yeah. Was to evaluate the acceptability and feasibility of CITAS using a manualized 6-month group-delivered intervention for caregivers of children with ASD. Will you advance the slides for me,
Oh,
Karen?
sorry, yeah.
I know how.
That's it, I got you.
You have to do it.
Okay. That's just a slide of like a summary of the study.
So there it is. And I think it's important to realize too that we had a cohort that was coming to the Marcus Autism Center to engage in this, as well as a cohort that was seen at the Chambly Primary Care. Karen would go to them, which I'm just going to give a shout out to. How can we bring our services into the community, to places where families feel comfortable coming? They already feel comfortable and do come to primary care places, centers. And so this was a wonderful partnership. And
just, you were so good to not interrupt me, but I just want to say that, you know, we can't do things without each other's help. So thank you for that really kind thing that you said, but with you and also Eileen Kaiser, there was a time when we were almost not going to have a second cohort. So that's like full transparency. I was like, short of standing in the corner Buford Highway or like, I don't know, just going to the market, like trying to recruit families. And it was a tough time in so many ways. So one day Eileen Kaiser said, why don't you see if you can have it at Chambly Primary Care? So again, thank you to so many folks, but that's all I'm gonna say about Leah.
So I think the other great thing about this is that what we really wanted to do was see if there was an impact on parent stress, the perception of social support that these caregivers felt, and also a sense of self-efficacy. Go ahead, Karen, advance me. So here are our participants. And so we have a small sample of 11 caregivers with children, and largely, they are female caregivers, which is not unusual for most of us to see. Quite an age range of child ages as well, and a bit of a disparate sample around household income, but still, you know, thinking about the also the balance of the backgrounds of these Latinx families, largely from Mexico. Go ahead, Karen.
Yep.
The measures included a maternal autism knowledge questionnaire, a concepts of development questionnaire, parenting stress index, a parenting sense of competence, and then a quality of life measure from the World Health Organization, and a satisfaction survey. So really this is to give us really a sense of knowledge. So if you think about what the point of a group like this might be, is that everybody is getting the same delivery of knowledge about autism. So how has knowledge changed? How does their sense of having knowledge help them feel more competent, and have less stress? But also we're also looking to see whether the group also taught these families some skills that made them feel better about their time with their children. Go ahead, Karen. So using a mixed model analysis, and those of you who are statistically minded know that an N of 11 is a small N, so there's not a lot we can do with those numbers. But what we could see is that there was some really nice, and I'm going to let you look at these numbers, but hopefully Karen did put that slide in at the next slide, which is what these numbers tell me, is that, I'm waiting for the numbers. We'll go back. I'll talk about it from the
there you go.
Table. That there is acceptability and potential feasibility of CITAS, and that it might. So an N of 11 only tells us there's a trend. So what we see in the numbers that were significant, and I can pop back to them if any of you are real stats folks and you want to look at them. But really what we saw is that CITAS may be improving the knowledge of child development, as well as parent self-efficacy and the quality of life of these Latino mothers of children with ASD. And they were feeling a greater sense of quality of life, but they're also feeling less stress. So at the end of the treatment sessions, they were feeling less stress. So they knew more about their children's ASD. They understood potentially why their child was doing what they were doing, or how they were communicating, what the purpose was of their communication, even if it was behaviorally difficult for them. And this led them to feel greater competence, but also less stress. And I think that's really important, because stress is a huge factor in parenting anyway. But parenting a child with a disability, it causes great stress. And what we really felt, go ahead.
I think oopsies, I needed to switch the order. But go ahead. Oops. Sorry, guys. Keep going, Jen. There, lessons learned. There you go.
So also, we also learned feasibility. So everything about a feasibility study is, does it work? So it's great when we create these beautiful, manuals and sessions, and we say, now this is it, this is the way to do it. But it's not feasible if it's not going to work outside of the laboratory environment. And so feasibility actually, having families come to Marcus, if it's available to them, if it's close to them, if they're coming there already because another child of theirs is being seen in the building possibly, that might be feasible. But for many families, coming to Marcus is not feasible. If any of you have ever been to Marcus, we have parking and access and all of these other kind of things. But also just feeling a sense of comfort that is their place. And so being able to be at Chamblee Primary Care also gave us some indication of some community feasibility. So, the location and transportation was a challenge, as was childcare. So if they have other children, how do we sort of give them the opportunity to be learning when they have other children who need their care at that time? We need to include some recruitment personnel. Having a recruiter, other than Karen standing on the side of Buford Highway saying, I have a study for you, is important. Recruitment is often really important. And she referenced Eileen Kaiser, who has worked with me for several years on several projects. And so we have learned the power of recruiting into primary care. Strengthening relationships with primary care providers. Primary care providers often want a solution. They want to know where to send a family. And so when we strengthen our relationships with them, families, at least prior to COVID, we may be in a very strange time right now, but prior to COVID, parents were hopefully showing up to some kind of primary care provider to get immunizations and getting at least sick child care, if not well child care. And so primary care can be a very strong partner. And then looking at some qualitative data collection, asking families to in their own words tell us what it meant to them, why it was important to them. and to do that in a systematized manner. You'll see that Karen has included some really nice stories. And also just making sure that caregivers understand the measures that are being asked of them to complete, so that we're sure that we're getting something that's robust.
All right, thank you. So you did, okay. So I'm going to play the video, just letting you folks know that she's speaking in Spanish, and I did my best to capture what she was saying in English on the left. Okay, and Jennifer, there's a couple more slides for you, Jennifer, but is it okay that we play this right now so they get
you do you.
This is the best part of the presentation, right? We always
I think so too.
And we always like the parents and
hear from these families. They're awesome.
Okay. So just real quick, this mom came through another one of our studies, and I see the lovely Chelsea in the house. She's helping out, research coordinator with the MCS study, and so her son was seen in Spanish and diagnosed with ASD at 18 months. And so we followed 18 months. I think they came back at 24 and 36. And so the other great thing is that she was able to get onto this study at sort of this great time and for her, because she just really had just received a diagnosis. I think he was about two and a half. So she was still trying to figure it all out and looking for Spanish support. So I realized when I asked, we did the interviews at a Mexican restaurant on Buford Highway. We did, again, going back to like us coming to them, that was what was feasible. I told them I would treat them for lunch and pick a place, and they picked this restaurant. So a big shout out and thank you to Talpa Mexican restaurant. But I do apologize for the background noise. Oh, sorry. I asked them, what did you like or what did you learn from the program CITAS?
Convivir con él, cómo sería de cómo tratar de convivir con él, cómo tratar de entenderlo, de qué manera hablarle, o cuánto tiempo hay que estarles hablando para que ellos, aunque nos entiendan o no nos entiendan, uno estar ahí al pendiente.
Yes. Okay, muchas gracias. Okay, we're gonna move right along to you, so we could hear from you guys, right? So this is Araceli, another mom. She had an older child with ASD, but she also joined the group, and I was thankful she let me interview her as well.
¿Qué fue algo que le gustó del programa de CITAS?
La dinámica, y la verdad aprendimos mucho porque nos enseñaste mucho sobre el desarrollo desde que están bebés, desde chiquititos, y cómo van creciendo. Entonces, en su desarrollo, en su conducta y en el habla, eso estuvo muy bien. Cosas que no sabíamos, nos enseñaste.
So I don't know if you guys call it chiquitito. I love it. We use a lot of diminutive language in Spanish. So chiquitito, little. And then this is another mom with a son with autism who's 4, I believe.
Cuénteme qué fue lo que le gustó del programa de CITAS.
Bueno, pues me gustó porque pues fue un apoyo, es un apoyo, y pues ahora sí que ahí pues nos informaron en cómo podíamos ayudarnos primero a nosotros mismos con nuestros hijos a detectar más puntos y hacer más estrategias también. Las estrategias son muy importantes porque con eso podemos ayudar más fácilmente a nuestros hijos y también a otras familias.
Okay. And Jennifer, do you mind talking about just these next few slides about social support?
No, that's good. I'm
okay.
all here.
So go ahead.
So what the research tells us is that support from family and friends is linked to the overall mental health of the Latinx community. And that would be a very difficult thing to find if you were one of many in a group that was largely underserved in an autism center. So when we think about bringing folks together and offering a support that is for them in the language that they are most comfortable speaking. And, you know, I will come at this from, the research is so compelling that we need to be having people and I was going to say allowing people, but really it is allowing people the freedom and to feel strong in their own, speaking of their home language, and it allows them to express also their culture and express their family values. And so I think that this is a really important way of helping to create social support.
And then there's my niece again.
Oh, she's so cute.
My sister might kill me for this angle, but I just love this. It was a video, and I was like late last night trying to clip it so I could have some more photos. And I love how she's feeding her mama. So,
and also when you think about autism, when I read through this statement that is pulled from the literature, mothers with greater social support showed improved engagement, greater frequency of verbal praise, and heightened sensitivity during mother-child interactions. Well, everything we know about the early onset of autism spectrum disorder and what will help to build a baby's brain is right there. We want mothers to feel engaged with their babies. We want them to feel the connection between their baby and themselves, and to have and to do more praising. And that is more difficult with children who are developing ASD because they don't always respond to the same cues. And so these mothers need to feel good, and they need to feel resilient so they can keep at it. And so there's a lot of research about early onset of autism symptoms that disrupts this. And so mothers having social support helps us to undergird them with great resiliency in their parenting.
Thank you. So do you want to mention it, or?
Okay, go, you do.
So just like, you know, there's a lot of things that observations I made, maybe at the time weren't measuring them in the study, but what really was nice to go along with those two slides is that, you know, when CITAS was over, parents were done with the study, and yet 5 of the caregivers who participated in CITAS actually continue to come seeking that social support, right? And so some of these families have now made friendships. Lupe, the lady who was the last one to talk, she has a group who's doing some really amazing work, and it's moms and dads, extended family members of children with autism. They're called Familias Azules, Blue Families, and they've been doing some really beautiful outreach work right now. They've teamed up with organizations like Vecinos, the Buford Highway. So I have nothing to do with that. You know, that was all them, and you could tell the need for them to want to seek each other out and have that support. And I think that's it. I try to cut some of it. This is just that the manual is coming soon. We are working really hard on it. It's going to be free. It's going to be available in English and Spanish. The idea behind it would be that the person implementing this feels comfortable, and you don't have to be, you know, it helps if you speak Spanish, obviously, but it's going to be in both languages. And the mindset was that there are those rural places where they only have a speech pathologist or an early intervention provider who is familiar with that language in the same way that I'm a little bit familiar with Farsi or a little bit familiar with French, right? And so that's still a little bit better to implement, or to share information rather than someone who is really apprehensive and feels not equipped to do so. I think at the end of the day, you know, the American Speech Language and Hearing Association mandates us to see children and families who are culturally and linguistically diverse. And so again, just trying to continue to produce materials and information that can be utilized that way. And then just, I really like that idea of you can insert pretty much anyone that's working with children and families. But, you know, at the end of the day, we have to respect family views, even if they're different from our own. We have to learn how to listen to our families so that we could become better practitioners and better people for them. And then also respect and and learn to modify our services to meet their needs. So if that means that, you know, you're going to have to include grandma in the treatment, that's fine. But at the end of the day, our goal is to really help support these children and families who have children with autism and other disabilities. Okay, so that's it. Oh, wait, no, that's not it at all. I'm sorry. Mil gracias is 1,000 thanks. You know, this was my first rodeo as far as like how involved I've been in a research study. So first and foremost, I want to thank all the families, and I want to thank the dads who made it possible. We really need to reach out to fathers, but most of them were busy working and made it possible for the moms to attend. I want to thank the Emory Pediatric Research Alliance, Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, Chambly Center, the Marcus Autism Center, Clarissa Chamorro, a big thanks. She helped me throughout. She's a research coordinator, and without her, I couldn't have done this. Again, Natalie Mora, Eileen Kaiser, Cheryl Rhodes, and lastly, Dr. Lindy Morgan and Dr. Jennifer Staplewax for all of their guidance and support with CITAS. Good night.
Yay.
Do people have questions or thoughts about, you know, the study or kind of what we are looking at, or?
I have a question. Could you tell me a little bit more about how the support for the caregivers look on a, because I think I read it was 8 to 10 weeks, you said? Or how long is the training, and what is it? Is it a full day of training? How does that?
Yeah, good question. Like? You know, thank you for that. I actually didn't include the time. It was, it started out, frankly, we were planning to just do 1 session per month. Given the, you know, we did have some parents, actually we had a family that drove all the way from Dacula, and so it's if you're from Georgia, it's pretty far from Atlanta. So initially we were aiming for 1 session per month for a period of an hour and a half. And then within the next, probably when I met the second cohort, they were really wanting more frequency. So we upped it to 2 times per month for an hour and a half. And so, yeah.
Thanks.
And both groups were given the same amount of time, right? So the Marcus group received twice a month, and the cohort that was at Chambly Primary Care also received twice a month for an hour and a half.
Okay. And with this current situation that's going on, do you think that maybe you might go a little bit virtual to reach out to more families, or that's not something that you know, it's set up in that way? I know both virtual is great to be able to reach out to more people, but there's something about the one-on-one in the group in person that is very impactful. So
yeah,
you know,
no, that's a great question. I mean, I'm always at the discretion of my leaders and directors at Marcus in terms of the direction they want to go. But I can tell you right now, I'm still working with Cheryl Rhodes, who's the director of care coordination. And so we're already offering El Grupo de Apoyo, which is a monthly parent support group that was meeting anyway. And so we went virtual with that. You know, we were averaging about 12 to 15 parents physically there, because a lot of them, I think, also wanted that socialization. Mm-hmm. And then my heart goes out to all the parents and families that are also trying to navigate online schooling. And so, but I will say that we've done it for 2 months, and I've had 6 to 7 parents attend. And then we've also decided that for those parents needing additional support, to offer them 30 minutes one-on-one to check in, you know, how are you doing? How's your child doing? Is there anything we can help you with? If I can't help you, Michelle Rhodes can help you. Do you need to change an appointment? Do you have any concerns? That sort of thing.
Oh, okay, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. Thanks for coming.
No, thank you for coming and sharing.
Well, I want to hear from you guys. You know, what discipline are you guys? You know, what's your interest in coming to check this out today? Or you know, is this a community you're serving? Are you yourself Latino? And just, we want to hear from you guys.
Very selfishly, this is Naima. I work Karen's a colleague, and so I'm kind of fangirling her, but I would see her with the groups, and it's nice to get the information and nice to hear what's transpired in the study. Reaching out to our Latino and Latina families is extremely important, and I'm just so glad that they had someone to kind of talk to and go through the study, because it's very important. So I just want to say thank you for that, and bravo.
Thank you, Naima. Naima's another rock star. I'm surrounded by rock stars, so I just got to keep it up. I got to hang with these guys. I do want to say real quick, I spent some time working in Hugh Spalding with Dr. Leslie Rubin and a big team down there. And a lot of the patients and families I work with were African-American. And so when I give talks, I like to walk the walk. And so, it was really interesting because I had to learn a lot about African-American culture and sort of how to connect with them. And that was a combination of, reading, of sharing my own stories, of listening to their stories, of showing their children love and compassion because they just had the most beautiful kids. And I felt like it was the key to really connect with families. I think at the end of the day, most families from different cultures really do want that connection, but we just need to take the time to get to know them and what their needs are. And remember that everybody's walk is different. Some parents are struggling. There's single family home. I had grandparents that were taking care of 2 to 3 children with disabilities, and they never missed their appointment. And so I would just tell them that day, you never miss an appointment. I admire that. I really, really do. And so, yeah, just open hearts, open mind,
Karen, this is Lama Farhan.
Hey,
Thank you.
Dr. Farhan.
The second time listening to your talk, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. I just have a question about the sample demographics. When you mentioned something about the household income, I believe you mentioned 7 were or had a household income greater than 25,000. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe that's
okay. Just could you speak a little more about what that meant? Because that could be a wide range. Was it closer to the 25,000, or was it much greater than the 25,000? And how was maternal? Did you know anything about maternal education in addition to the household income?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And, when parents were filling out these measures, again, there were times when I definitely felt like what do you call it? Those folks playing different instruments, a harmonica, a one-man show. Clarissa was helping me with families fill out these measures. And of course, there were some questions that she couldn't answer. I would like to say that that is a question that even, Jennifer, remind me, the Constantino measure that we use at Market.
John Constantino.
Yeah, with the one, the interview that we do.
Oh, right, the interview that he developed around. It was originally used for our ACE Center grant that is recruiting African American families.
I'm blanking out, but I apologize. Right,
yeah.
Too much information. But anyway,
CITAS, but we're trying to put it into use for the Latinx population. But were you about to say that even that is not well formulated in there?
Well, no, I was going to say that even when I did that measure with families, that was an area that they always kind of were hesitant about filling out. And so again, we had a lot of questions about that when they were reporting their income. They wanted to know if they were supposed to include money that maybe families from Mexico would send them. They just were unsure. So, I'd like to think that they answered it to the best of their ability, but most of the over 25,000 was not over 28 to answer that question. And then secondly, maternal education is huge, right? I mean, there's been a lot of work around that area. And I think, let's see, we started out with 16, and there were actually 2 dads involved, and they had to drop out. One car issue, and the second one was work. He had to go back to work. But You know, maybe those questions I can send to Dr. Morgan, because I know she has all the specific data, and I don't want to misspeak, but anecdotally, since I've made relationships with these families, a lot of them, I can say that we had at least 3 mothers that had careers in Mexico. So one had worked as an architect, and another one a counselor, but the majority had finished high school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that helps. Well, thank you so much. I'm just like, wondering, also another related question, whether the 2 samples, the one at Marcus and the one in Chambly, were they comparable in terms of, again, maternal education and income? And those, again, you don't have to say it right now, but it's just kind of made me think about those questions as I think about moving forward with a study. I think it's really important to kind of consider these, and I'm sure you're thinking about them. But very interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I do want to comment, that's a great observation. The cohort at Marcus started out as, that one was the one that had the most attrition. So interestingly enough, the cohort at Marcus, the 3 parents who remained matched more closely the sample that was going to Chambly, if that makes sense. So in other words, the other 3 or 4 caregivers that dropped out were mostly dual income households. So both parents worked, and the ones who stayed were and now I know who they are. It's like 25,000 or less are folks who, and they match closer. And also there were a lot of the family's background was Mexican too, right? And so those are differences that we tend to look at in terms of, there's been studies looking at how culturally we look at developmental milestones. So when our children should meet certain milestones. I know there's been studies done with Puerto Rican families who expect gesture and smile to happen a little bit later than others. So yeah, a lot of really cool, interesting things that we could look at for sure moving forward.
I would say too that it's interesting what you just said, Karen, because that actually we have a paper coming out about our Autism Center of Excellence treatment study in the first grant, and we were looking at barriers and obstacles to treatment. And what was fascinating was that it was the folks who came from dual income homes, not the folks who had the lowest income and not the folks who had the highest income, that tended to miss more appointments and tended to not be able to engage in intervention. And at first we were just baffled. And what we realized was what we might be seeing is that some of those lower income homes were homes in which there was one person working a kind of consistent job, and there was one person who was much more of the homemaker. And so they were present. Even if they had part-time work, they were much more present for the intervention. And the folks who were in the higher income bracket maybe had either had somebody who could be at home, like a nanny, or they had the grandmother, and they were dual income, or they made a sufficient amount of income that only one person worked. But those middle folks who had 2 wage earners who just couldn't be available during available hours. So this also goes to the feasibility of when we run things that are only 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, to support parents. So there's a lot of things we learn about feasibility and community viability.
Yeah, we certainly, it seems like this notion that you guys have written a lot about it, and then the research is that we do have to come to families, right? And I think the virtual thing could be a really great opportunity to do that, as more of us also get in our groove, in our comfort zone. We can't miss out on that window, right? And so we have to keep it going with every culture, with every family, and so I think that's important. And then the other thing I wanted to say was it's called the Diagnostic Odyssey.
Thank you.
That interview. Yeah. Yeah, I was like, that's so much information. Before I forget, I really just want to take the time, frankly, to say thank you to the folks from the Autism Conference and Expo of Georgia. you know, I did this presentation last Wednesday. We had 29 caregivers. Some of them participated in the study, and we had really nice feedback. I had to translate this and get rid of all the crazy research numbers that we look at. And I just appreciate that they have this forum, this way, the style of offering this to families and then also providers. And you know, none of this would have, I think we got, are we here? Hello?
Yeah, so
We're
we
back.
got transferred into the main room. So
Oh.
I was telling my people if they still had questions, they can, you know, I'll hang around a little bit and answer questions. But if you guys want to head off, that's fine. Did you all get to finish up okay?
Girl, we were just thanking you. What happened?
Yeah. Yeah, you interrupted a thank you for you.
Oh, man.
For Ace.
Well, I'm here now to hear it live.
Okay, so so no, I was just, you know, and Dr. Staplewax can say if she wants. I was just saying how much I appreciate your platform, what you guys offer for families, and I got to do this last week in Spanish, and so I've gotten some feedback from parents saying they really like the whole day of track of information, and just for having us. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you for your time. We are so thankful at the center to have awesome presenters, awesome facilitators. We couldn't do this conference without you guys. So really, really, really thank you. Because if we didn't have you, we wouldn't have an agenda or a schedule to even host the conference. So you guys are very important, and we really appreciate your time.
Let's give ourselves a hug. Yay.
Like hug our computers.
Thank you for doing such a great job.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank
Really.
you, guys. Thank you.
You
The
certainly
team-
had a flex and adopt. So
yeah,
thank you
we
for
had
doing that.
to, and I couldn't do it without my team. So like Margaret is still on here. Margaret has been so helpful. David, I think he jumped off already.
Probably doing something else.
Yeah, probably had to go to a different meeting, but he was this, oh gosh, these lunch discussions, trying to get everyone in the room, we're really trying to figure that out. So third time's the charm. So I think tomorrow is going to be even better than today.
Okay.
So we appreciate y'all's flexibility for sure. It's tough getting everyone in their assigned room when there's so many people. So that's what our fear was and why we rescheduled them, because we had over 700 people say that they wanted to attend the conference, and we would not have been able to break out all those people at one time. So that's why we broke it up to these smaller sessions, which I actually prefer. So, but that's me. So we're going to actually ask you guys for your feedback for the lunch discussions as well, and see what you think about this format. Because we're really open to doing things differently if our funders, you know, allow us to. So we
Great.
really appreciate y'all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Stay safe.
See you guys. Thank you. Were there any other questions for me though? I know I said I would stick around and make sure. Everybody's good. Joelle, you're good? Okay, awesome. All right.
Alrighty. Alrighty, let me get back to work.
All right. Thank you, Margaret.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Close this thing. Oh, there it goes.